thank you for joining us today for our webinar, Welcoming State Street Global Advisors to CalTRUST. I'm Laura Labanier, your CalTRUST CEO, and I really appreciate you taking time out of your day to join us, and I appreciate your engagement with CalTRUST and the opportunity for us to be a resource for you. Our objective today is to walk you through the RFP process that we went through for investment manager selection. As I hope you know, one of the key tenets for CalTRUST is transparency. So it's very important for us to make sure that our shareholders understand the process we go through and how we came to the decisions that we have come to. So joining us today, we have Chuck Lomelli. He is Solano County Treasurer, Tax Collector, and 10 other things, as well as a CalTRUST trustee and one of the founders of CalTRUST. So he'll be speaking with me today. And then we also have with us members of the State Street Global Advisors team, Will Goldthwaite. Will, I'm so sorry. I think I just butchered your name. I apologize.
No, you got it spot on.
Portfolio strategist. We have Sean Leisher, who is our portfolio manager and will be overseeing our liquidity fund. And then Jim Palmieri, portfolio manager, who'll be overseeing our short and medium term funds. As a matter of housekeeping, all your participant phones and microphones are muted, but we always allow time for questions. So please take advantage. You can type your questions into the Q&A box. You can chat them to us. Or later, you can raise your hand and we can unmute you so you can ask your question directly. So we encourage you, please ask away. We want to make this as valuable for you as we can. So with that aside, I'm going to go ahead now and just kind of walk you through kind of CalTRUST protocol and the process that we go through for RFPs. So at the most basic level, CalTRUST does have a protocol that at least once every 7 years, we go to RFP for all of our service providers. So we never let a contract go longer than 7 years before putting it back out on the street. Last time we made changes and went through our RFP process when we selected our current investment manager back in 2017, we were at a point where we actually RFP'd all of our service providers at the same time, which, as you can imagine, was a bit of a haul and probably, not something I would recommend doing as much as I love doing RFPs. And I know I'm the only person you'll probably ever hear say that, but they're kind of like my Super Bowl, right? It's a great chance to see what people really are bringing to the table and, how firms have changed and grown and what's really available for service. So with that being said, we put ourselves on a schedule now of staggering our RFPs for our assorted service providers, so we're not in a position of doing them all at the same time again. So at this point, we have been with our current investment management team at BlackRock for 6 years. So it was time to go to bid for that service. This has been a very lengthy process. So we first released an RFP publicly at the beginning of November of last year. So when we released that RFP, we had identified a number of investment management firms who we either found or who had reached out to us over the years, direct contacts that we sent the RFP to. And then it was also published on multiple public sites for investment management teams. So we had a very good response rate. We actually received 13 responses to our investment management RFP, and those were received in December. Once we received those responses, myself and our CalTRUST investment committee did a first round of review on them and went through all 13 responses after having read them in full, which man, some of these are like 200 pages. Let me tell you, even I question myself saying how much I love RFPs at points. We went through them all and we had such great responses that in the end, we ended up selecting 6 firms to do first round of interviews with. So that did include our incumbent BlackRock, of course, the State Street Global Advisors team, and 4 additional firms. So once we made that selection in February of this year, we had all 6 firms come and interview with the entire board of trustees. So our entire board was involved in the process and sat through the interviews. And so we interviewed each firm. At that point, we whittled it down to 2 firms that we wanted to get additional information on and do on-site due diligence visits. So at that point, members of our board, 3 members of the board and I traveled to the 2 finalist interviews, and our additional board members joined remotely. So again, at the final stage as well, all members of the CalTRUST Board of Trustees were present. So we conducted those, I believe, in March. After that, it was some time kind of really weighing our decision and looking at the pros and cons of everyone we interviewed. We were really pleased with what we had seen and what options were available to us. And ultimately, the board was confident in unanimously selecting State Street Global Advisors as our new investment management team. So it was not a process we took lightly. It was a very lengthy process. I will also offer up, if anyone for your own agency is looking at investment management in the future, please let me know. We're happy to share our resources, more information on our RFP, that kind of thing, as a template or whatever you may need. So please don't hesitate to reach out directly in the future if you are going through this yourself. So in March, we made the selection, and then we spent some time in April going through contract negotiations and getting to our final place. And then in May, the State Street team, including the gentleman on the call with us now and additional members of the State Street team, came out and met with our board of trustees and began talking about strategy and portfolio structure and kind of scratching the surface as we're working through our transition. So we are currently in the transition process. We are going live and we'll have the transition process completed on August 1st. So as of August 1st, State Street will officially be in the investment management seat. I'd be remiss to not mention that we've been very happy with the service we received from BlackRock over the last 6 years, but the nature of firms and our business evolves. And so with that, we have to do what we think is in the best for the program. So we are very confident with this process and this decision. I have been talking at you for quite a few minutes now. So I'm going to go ahead and hand it over to Chuck on this side of my screen and ask Chuck to talk through from his perspective kind of some of the deciding factors, and from a trustee perspective, give us some context on the selection of State Street Global Advisors.
Thank you, Laura. We had some fantastic finalists that we had to choose from. I was a member of the team, as Laura said, that conducted the due diligence visits to the top firms to meet the professionals that would be involved with the program. We wanted to make sure that these people understood what our program was and the environment that we operate in here in California, as our global advisor team is headquartered out of Boston. The team selected State Street Global Advisors as the top firm. This firm offers a wide range of investment professionals on the trading desk that we think will fit well with our CalTRUST platforms. The team has a proven performance history and an outstanding research and compliance operation that we dug into with some detail at the due diligence visits. State Street also has in-state representatives to assist our client outreach team in the form of Charlie Praska and Chris Presley, who many people may recognize those names. They'll actually be working hand in glove with our team here in the state. State Street offers a solid support team for our back office operations as far as reporting, information flow, support for the website, education, just to name a few. State Street's committed to transparency in all aspects of the CalTRUST operations. And as Laura said, that's critical to the Board of Trustees. Our program was founded on that principle. Our Board of Trustees welcome State Street Global Advisors, and we are excited to begin our partnership with you. And thank you and welcome.
Great, thanks.
Terrific, terrific.
Oh, okay.
Oh, sorry. Go
No,
ahead, Laura.
I was just going to introduce you and add a couple comments. I'll just add a couple brief comments and then I'll pass it over. Thank you, Chuck. That was a great kind of overview of what really we saw as setting State Street apart. And from a staffing perspective, I think we are really excited for some of the service enhancements that you're going to see from CalTRUST with this partnership. So we'll talk a little bit more about that, but to kind of give a teaser, we're really looking at increased education, getting our webinars on a more regular schedule and progressive education, having members of the team available with us at conferences and events for you to meet and speak with and dive down into State Street and CalTRUST with, and just this deep enthusiasm for California and for this market. So we are very excited. One of the missions of our board has really become to make CalTRUST a greater resource in general for finance professionals and California public agencies. And I think this is a really great step in that direction. So now I'd love to pass it over to Will.
Super. Thank you, Laura. Thanks, Chuck. Great to be here and kick this call off. And what I would imagine is going to be many, many calls that we'll have with you and the CalTRUST community. So looking forward to being part of it. I think what I'll do is just spend a few minutes talking about who State Street Global Advisors is, sort of how we've evolved over the years. And then I'll talk a little bit about what my role is. And then ultimately I'll pass it off to Sean, and he can talk about how he manages the liquidity pool, and then over to Jim, and he can talk about how he manages the strategy pools as well. So, State Street Global Advisors is a wholly owned subsidiary of State Street Bank. Many people know the bank from the Global Services division and the Global Markets division. That's really where we got started. We're a 225-year-old institution, second oldest in the United States, and we've been doing cash management since our founding in 1978. So in 1978, the bank formed State Street Global Advisors, and we launched our short-term investment fund, which remains a flagship commingled vehicle for our risk-eligible custody clients. And many of your pension assets might be in that if you custody with State Street. And that fund remains about $60 billion in size. But the thing that I think, really pride ourselves is sort of the evolution of our business. We're constantly looking at the marketplace and trying to understand what's going on in the marketplace, and then trying to understand how that's going to impact our investors. So if you look at over our 40 plus year history, we've really constantly been asking ourselves, what is best for clients? How are we best going to put together solutions for those clients and help clients achieve their goals? So the way we think about our cash management business is conservative and smart. We don't want to put risk, unnecessary risk into the portfolio. We want to essentially deliver the safety, liquidity, and market rate of return that you've come to expect. And then Jim will talk a little bit more about his short-term, ultra short-term strategies and the framework that they have in place for those strategies. But over time, we've seen our business evolve. Most recently launching a money market ETF that fits nicely into our suite of ETFs. We've launched ESG products. We've launched DE&I products in the cash space. And so we're always looking at what's going on in the marketplace. I think the thing that we're focused on now is the SEC's money fund reform. And that doesn't affect this CalTRUST product specifically, but it could affect markets around it. And so that's something that we want to help you get smart about, so that you understand how this might impact the markets that you're involved in these three vehicles that we'll be managing. So that's some of the things we think about. Now, my role at State Street, we also manage approximately 3.6 trillion in total assets, and then about 420 billion in cash assets. So those are some of the things. So that's some of the AUM. Now, my role at State Street Global Advisors is specifically to help you get smart about anything that's going on in the markets. And so what we're hoping to do is produce a series of webinars, series of conference calls, speaking engagements, or just face-to-face visits, where I can come in and talk to you about the economy, regulatory environment, things that are top of mind as far as what questions clients are asking, and what things could potentially be impacting the short-term portfolios. And so what I would encourage you to do is really ask questions. Really, any question is a good question. I think one of the most recent examples was through the debt ceiling negotiation that was going on between the House and the White House. House of Representatives and the White House. We got a lot of questions from clients like, what's this going to do to our portfolio? How's this going to impact the market? What does this mean if we cross X date? What would happen? And we were happy to walk people through, all of the potential outcomes, all of the things that could affect that, and some of the things that could or might happen, if we in fact did cross over that X date, or as we got closer to that X date. So that's one of the things that we would be really engaged with you guys. The other thing that I have a great that I have the great pleasure of, is being able to connect with so many other resources at State Street. So, for example, we had the head of our regulatory department at the bank came on our Tuesday call. We have a weekly internal call. He came on and talked about some of the regulatory reform that could potentially impact the market. And so we got real expert opinion. We recently heard from an economist that was talking about demographic shifts and how that will affect inflation in the market. And so bringing someone on to speak to you about that as well is something we're really looking forward to do. So really no topic is out of bounds. No question is a bad question. We really encourage you to reach out and ask anything, and we'd be happy to talk about it. So maybe I'll pause there and hand it over to Sean. Laura, unless you wanted to add anything?
No, I think that's great. Thank you. And again, I encourage folks, please, if you do have any questions, pop them in the Q&A in chat. We'll come back around to them. Also, if you have any areas of education resources you'd like to see us focus on or include, please go ahead and you can share that as well. So thank you. We'll go ahead and pass it off to Sean then.
Great. Thank you, Laura, and thank you, Chuck. I really appreciate the opportunity to speak with your participants today, and we really look forward to partnering with yourselves and your participants moving forward in the short end. I'll briefly describe our Global Cash team makeup and philosophy in regards to building short-dated liquidity funds with a focus on preservation of principal, liquidity, and a market rate of return, as Will mentioned. We at the SSGA Cash team, as Will also mentioned, we have a multi-decade amount of experience within the firm. We manage over 400 billion in assets across 3 global centers, which is Boston, London, and Sydney. One of the great benefits of the COVID era is that we're able to talk to these teams on a weekly basis to get global market experience and understanding what's happening from a global perspective with these teams in real time. Across our portfolio management team globally, we have 15 PMs, 9 located in Boston, 4 in London, and 2 in Sydney. As well as we have a short-term dedicated credit analyst team of 6 members who are strictly focused on short-end fundamental credit analysis, who established our credit list for approved buyers that is agnostic to ultimate ratings. It's an input into our process, but these people are doing, boots level fundamental analysis for the names that we provide within our portfolios. Of that 400 billion in assets, about 90% of that is US dollar managed out of Boston, of which I'm one of a member. When I talk about our team, I really mean it's a team process. We all sit next to each other with a credit analyst sitting in front of us. We can all talk about the markets. We have a wide panel of counterparties that we interact with on the street, which, given our size and the breadth of broker dealers, brokers, repo counterparties that we do transact with in the short end, it gives us, first mover advantage in many of the short end products, which is, it's a significant market advantage being first mover, and to have a real thought and to, have that communication with the street, as well as, it gives us access to both, as Will mentioned, our internal both rate strategist team, risk teams, et cetera, and external from, top level economic thoughts from some of the largest street dealers on the street. We very frequent meetings where we're meeting with some of the top economic research folks out there to get opinions. Just to speak for myself, I've been in the industry for 22 years. I began at State Street. I first started on the bank side as a fund accountant. I did the accounting for many of the funds that I manage today. And I've worked my way up to become a portfolio manager since 2007. So used that experience. We've seen a lot of different markets within the cash space over the last 16 years or so. So we always talk about experience is very vital when selecting a cash manager. Across our team, you have about 18 years of aggregate industry experience. So that really it pays off in regards to managing money through various cycles. I think we're really excited to be partnering. It's a very exciting time in cash. Really, when you look at the opportunities that cash is providing from both a yield perspective, versus other asset classes, a Fed that's sitting, that's threatening to be higher for longer time, that's going to add relative value return for the funds, as well as a period post the debt limit crisis that's offering a vast amount of supply of risk-free treasury bills that are going to, add a positive slope to the curve, and ultimately, given our construct, will allow us to produce a market rate of return for yourselves via the CalTRUST fund. And I'll stop there and hand it off to Jim, if that's okay.
Sure. Thanks, Sean. I just want to echo both Will and Sean, and of course Laura as well, that we're very excited to join the CalTRUST platform for sure. Myself, Jim Palmieri, I have over 25 years of experience as a fixed income portfolio manager. Some of the short duration funds that I manage today, I've been managing since 2006. So there's some longevity there. There's some consistency of platform and framework, which I think will come to the benefit of the shareholders of CalTRUST. At the highest level, I wanted to just share a few thoughts around our investment philosophy and process. From an investment philosophy perspective, as active fixed income managers, we believe the bond market is inherently inefficient. It's massive. It's got thousands of names spread across the yield curve, and for a variety of reasons that have to do with investor demands, there are gaps between demand and supply, and as a result, the inefficiencies exist. From our perspective, we use what we would call a long-term fair value and trend framework to take advantage of those inefficiencies across 3 different investing time horizons. The first one is structural, which I would describe as much longer than a business cycle. The second one is cyclical, which is within a business cycle. And then number 3, tactical, which I would describe as our day-to-day portfolio construction activities. So how does that process work? How would it work for the short-term fund and the medium-term fund? Well, now that we're getting a clear insight as to the risk appetite. Obviously, the objectives around safety and liquidity and yield stand out quite clearly. The way we'd apply it is first we'd apply our structural investment process, and that is where we take a modest amount of risk budget for each fund and establish risk targets for interest rate risk and sector allocation. And it's really meant for market environments in which pricing is in the context of long-term fair value. It creates a nice baseline set of risk targets for each strategy. But of course, market pricing can deviate from long-term fair value. And that's where that second step is, that cyclical investment process kicks in. And it wraps around a monthly asset allocation meeting. That's not only attended by the entire active fixed income team, it's attended by all sorts of folks across SSGA Global. And in that meeting, there's lots of discussion about the direction of travel for the economy and the markets. We're obviously doing risk reviews and performance attribution, and each sector PM is opining on their fixed income sector and talking a little bit about where pricing is. Has it deviated from long-term fair value? Why is it deviated from long-term fair value? And how much risk would they apportion to that particular fixed income sector, obviously in pursuit of return within the context of each fund's risk tolerance. What happens right after that, and I think this is something I pointed out during our conversations, Laura, is not only do we have an asset allocation committee meeting after that monthly meeting in which we make decisions around interest rate risk and sector allocation, we have a separate and distinct, what I would call asset allocation meeting for short duration products. And that's where I see the short-term fund and the medium-term fund getting that extra focus and attention, because we feel like we've got a good process for the broader bond market, but short duration products and that part of the yield curve for us is idiosyncratic and unique and requires that extra focus and attention to make sure that whatever we're translating from a broader perspective around relative value and fixed income, we're incorporating it properly into the shorter duration products, in which I see the short-term fund and the medium term as a real fit. And that kind of covers at a very high level the activities around establishing interest rate risk and sector allocation. Those risk targets I publish internally to portfolio management and the risk team. And then it's off to the day-to-day portfolio construction activities that really involves each fixed income segment's portfolio management, research, and trading team to, on a daily basis, look for relative value to construct the portfolios, of course, consistent with the objectives and constraints of any client mandate that we manage, and that would certainly apply to the short-term fund and the medium-term fund. And then it's the standard review, daily review by portfolio management, formal monthly reviews with our risk team. And certainly we can get into market environments that are quite choppy, and everything's accelerated around that for our team. We are positioned both in Stamford, Connecticut, as well as in Boston, Massachusetts. We have team members across the globe that participate and support what we're doing. And so there's plenty of connectivity there. And certainly it was stress tested back in March and April of 2020, in which the Asset Allocation Committee was meeting every day as pricing was moving every day. I think just briefly, when I think about the short-term fund and the medium-term fund, I thought it might be helpful just to briefly give you some insight as to where we see the economy from a directions of travel perspective. And then from a market pricing perspective, how we feel like we would potentially make some adjustments given what we know today in the short-term and medium-term fund. So at the highest level, from an economic perspective, no surprise given how tight monetary policy has become. We've clearly moved from accommodative a little over a year ago to what we would describe as restrictive, and it's not just the US, it's across the Western world. We've moved, what in our point of view, from an expansion stage of growth to decline. And so this is a tricky part, these late stages within a monetary policy tightening cycle. That's the place we're at. And from a market perspective, it's no surprise through our lens of long-term fair value. Presently, we see interest rate risk is on the cheap side of long-term fair value, but I think primarily because the job market's held together so well. The credit spread market for corporates, mortgages, et cetera, I'd say are trading no worse than long-term fair value. They've held in quite well as a result, I think, of a very resilient job market. And so when we kind of think about what we're favoring across all of our strategies where applicable, is we're going to where we're seeing value. And right now we're seeing value in rates and interest rate risk, and we're seeing some value, but it's too close to long-term fair value to be aggressive on credit. So what would that mean for the short-term fund and the medium-term fund? I suspect that we would want to make sure that we have room to buy corporate credit risk, for example, should this direction of travel around monetary policy and the economy translate to spreads moving to the cheap side of fair value. So I feel like that might be the first thing we would think about, making sure we have capacity to add risk should spreads get cheaper. And in a very modest way, certainly getting some insight onto the client experience regarding interest rate risk for these funds, in a very modest way, looking to take advantage of the cheapness we're seeing in interest rates for both products. Again, given today's pricing, August 1st is not that far away, but you never know. And obviously, we'll be certainly recalibrating our point of view and identification of value and the right tilts and biases for each fund. Why don't I pause there for a second, Laura, and give you some space for questions or comments.
Great. I've not seen any questions come in yet. Again, please encourage folks, if you do have a question, don't be shy. But I don't see anything coming through yet. Yeah. Jim, did you have more you wanted to share?
No, I figured I'd stop there. That's quite a bit to chew on, philosophy and process outlook. And some of the things we're thinking about as we get close to the transition date of August 1st. Maybe I'll just echo the excitement around joining CalTRUST as asset managers, but I wouldn't want to overstay my welcome.
I do that all the time. So while we're giving folks a chance, I appreciate your time today. I do want to let folks know that in line with our goals of being resourceful and education, tentatively, we have our next webinar scheduled for September 21st. I believe that's right after the Fed meeting. That will be one of our Coffee with CalTRUST webinars. So that will be one of our overview webinars, but we thought that would be an opportune time to do it because then you would also kind of get the CalTRUST background, plus the market update and what is happening and the implications of the FOMC meeting. And at that point as well, State Street will have been at the helm of our portfolios for a month and a half plus. And so you'll really get to see kind of the fruition of any structural changes and really get a solid review at that point of, how the portfolios are being managed and any changes. So that'll be coming September 21st. So stay tuned. We'll announce that with plenty of time. And other than that, we may do a follow-up webinar between now and then. We're just going to kind of see how the markets go and, the webinar cycle for folks. But stay tuned. We announce them loud and proud, as you know, because you're here. So more is coming. And that being said, I think everyone is shy today. And that's fine. This is a lot of information that we have thrown at everyone to digest. So you guys are always welcome, any of our participants, to get a hold of me. I'm easy to get a hold of, Laura, Laura, at caltrust.org. I don't even make you try to figure out how to spell my last name to get to me. So we're always happy to answer any questions, connect everyone to the State Street team. Thank you to the State Street team for joining us today. And Chuck, thank you for joining us. I also do want to point out, since when folks registered for this webinar, we had said John Colville, our board president, would be with us. Unfortunately, he had an urgent situation he had to attend to. So I really thank Chuck for jumping in and filling that gap last minute. So thank you. With that, I don't want to take too much of everyone's time. We will have a copy of this recording available, a recording of this webinar available on the website in the next couple days. So by Monday, that will be up and available for folks to share in your offices. And we will actually include that link as well when we send out next month's market statistics, our portfolio statistics. So thank you to everyone. I hope everyone has a great day, and I am excited for this partnership and the service enhancements that we're going to be able to bring to our public agencies in California. So with that, have a wonderful day, everyone, and we look forward to talking to you in the next webinar or in person before then. Bye.
Super. Thank you.
Thank you.